What if what you think is strength could be self-destruction? Stoicism has become the anthem of high performers, CEOs, athletes, and spiritual seekers alike. But beneath its promise of inner peace lies a chilling question. What if your emotional control is costing you your humanity? Imagine this. You're at your father's funeral. People are crying. Some can barely stand, but you're composed, collected, stoic. You quote Marcus Aurelius in your mind, telling yourself you're doing it right, that to feel grief is to give in to irrationality. But later, when you're alone in the dark, that calm begins to fracture, and you wonder, have I mastered my emotions? Or amputated them? Stoicism teaches us to embrace fate, to accept what we cannot control, to rise above emotions. But what happens when that detachment becomes a wall? When your calm is not resilience, but numbness? When your peace comes not from strength, but from fear of vulnerability? What if, in the pursuit of invincibility, you've become invisible, even to yourself? In this video, we're going to explore the hidden cost of Stoicism, how a philosophy built for freedom can, in the wrong hands, become a prison. We'll look at the psychological roots, the silent consequences, and the ultimate paradox of what it means to feel nothing at all. Because maybe, just maybe, your greatest virtue has become your most elegant form of escape. At first glance, Stoicism appears to be a cure for the modern soul. In a world addicted to outrage, overstimulation, and emotional reactivity, it offers something rare: stillness, a chance to reclaim agency, a way to live from the inside out instead of being jerked around by the chaos of life. But the question you must ask yourself isn't, does Stoicism work? The real question is, what is it helping you avoid? Because often, what appears to be spiritual progress is really a sophisticated form of psychological defense. Behind many who adopt Stoicism lies a quiet trauma and experience of being overwhelmed by feeling. Maybe it was emotional neglect in childhood, maybe betrayal, maybe heartbreak that split something open and never quite healed. And so, in the name of self-mastery, we build fortresses, not out of stone, but out of principles, out of ancient texts, out of quotes we repeat not to grow, but to not feel. Carl Jung warned us about this. People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own souls. Stoicism, when misunderstood or weaponized, becomes the perfect tool for this avoidance. It allows us to appear strong, wise, serene, while burying unresolved grief beneath the floorboards of our minds. Let's be clear, the original Stoics were not cold, mechanical robots devoid of emotion. Marcus Aurelius grieved. Epictetus acknowledged suffering. Seneca wrote letters brimming with human conflict and personal anxiety. But they also lived in a world where showing too much emotion could be seen as weakness, where nobility meant not flinching when your child died in your arms. And here lies the rot at the core of misunderstood Stoicism: repression disguised as virtue. When you treat emotions as enemies instead of messengers, you don't evolve, you calcify. You turn pain into silence and call it wisdom. But silence isn't wisdom, it's anesthesia. And anesthesia, while useful in surgery, becomes deadly when used every day just to survive being yourself. Nietzsche once wrote, "Beware that, when fighting monsters, you yourself do not become a monster." And for many, Stoicism becomes that monster. A shield so polished, it reflects nothing back. No joy, no sorrow, no chaos, no truth. The psychological mechanism here is subtle but powerful. It is called emotional suppression, a coping strategy where a person consciously tries to inhibit the outward signs of their internal states. And on the surface, it seems noble. But neurologically, it doesn't erase the emotion, it traps it. Studies in neuroscience reveal that when you suppress emotions, you increase activity in the amygdala, your brain's fear center, while reducing connectivity in the areas responsible for memory and empathy. You're not becoming more logical. You're just freezing the system. You might say, but that's the point. I don't want to feel. And therein lies the confession. Because if Stoicism is your sword against discomfort, what are you so afraid of facing? Viktor Frankl, a Holocaust survivor and psychiatrist, wrote, "An abnormal reaction to an abnormal situation is normal behavior." What many Stoics call strength may simply be a survival strategy, a way to feel safe in a world that once felt uncontrollable, a way to ensure no one can ever hurt you again. But if no one can hurt you, can anyone truly reach you? You see, Stoicism doesn't make you fearless. It makes you unreadable, unshakable, yes, but also unknowable. To others, and to yourself. It creates a self so tightly governed that spontaneity, wonder, and even love must pass through a gatekeeper of logic and control. And here's the philosophical irony. In trying to become rational, we often lose what makes us real. This isn't just an individual problem, it's a cultural one. Modern society rewards the Stoic archetype, the cool-headed entrepreneur, the soldier who never blinks, the monk who smiles while the world burns. We confuse emotional suppression with leadership, detachment with intelligence, and silence with depth. But as Aldous Huxley warned, the more powerful and original a mind, the more it will incline towards the religion of solitude. And too often, that solitude becomes a mausoleum. We stop connecting, we stop confessing, we stop feeling, and all the while, we call it self-improvement. But perhaps the darker truth is this: we are terrified of being fully alive. Because to be alive is to risk grief, humiliation, chaos, joy, ecstasy, heartbreak. It means being cracked open. It means not knowing. It means vulnerability, not just to the world, but to yourself. And Stoicism, in its darkest form, becomes a way to say, no, thank you. I'd rather remain untouched. But untouched by pain also means untouched by meaning. This is where the teachings of Stoicism diverge from the essence of being human. The Stoics were never trying to erase humanity. They were trying to navigate it. But many today use Stoicism to delete their emotional code, mistaking that for transcendence. So ask yourself, honestly, are you practicing Stoicism to become stronger, or to avoid the truth of your own softness? Are you trying to become unbreakable, or are you simply afraid of what might break through? Because unless you face that hidden fear, no philosophy, no matter how ancient, noble, or rational, can save you. Not from chaos, not from suffering, and certainly not from yourself. You don't notice the damage at first. That's what makes it so dangerous. The world applauds you for being calm under pressure. Your friends admire how little you react. You're the person people turn to during a crisis because you don't fall apart. You never cry at funerals. You never raise your voice in arguments. You've become a monument of self-possession. But deep down, something begins to erode. Your relationships start to feel strangely thin. People trust you with logistics, but not with their hearts. You're admired, but not deeply known. Others open up to you, but you never quite meet them halfway. They say you're strong, but they don't say you're warm. They say you're impressive, but they don't say you're close. And when you're alone, the silence is no longer peace. It starts to ache. It feels like you've built a beautiful prison around yourself and thrown away the key. This is the paradox of Stoicism's dark side. The very tools designed to liberate you from suffering can, when misused, imprison you in a kind of emotional isolation. You stop reacting not because you're enlightened, but because you've grown numb. You stop caring, not because you've mastered desire, but because you've slowly stopped feeling it all. The consequences are subtle, but relentless. Let's start with emotional disconnection. Studies in effective neuroscience reveal that chronically suppressing emotions leads to a reduction in the brain's ability to process all feelings, including joy, love, awe, and connection. The same mechanism that dulls pain also blunts beauty. You can't selectively mute sorrow without also quieting wonder. And this isn't just theory. Over time, your baseline level of aliveness begins to drop. You stop noticing sunsets. Music moves you less. You find fewer things funny. Pleasure becomes muted, and even victories feel strangely hollow. You've insulated yourself not just from pain, but from meaning. And then comes the relational fallout. Because while people may respect your calm, they begin to sense the absence behind it. They don't feel your presence in the room. They can't quite feel you. You listen, but you don't share. You help, but you don't ask. You love, but not vulnerably. And so, your relationships become functional, but not intimate. Dependable, but not deep. You might even start hearing things like, "You're always so composed." It's hard to know what you're really feeling. "I feel like I'm the only one who ever opens up. Sometimes I wonder if anything ever truly affects you." They don't mean it as criticism, but it cuts anyway, because there's a loneliness that comes from being admired instead of understood. And this is where Stoicism, misunderstood and unbalanced, quietly robs you of something essential: emotional resonance. Think of a tuning fork. In order to resonate, it has to be open, soft, vulnerable to vibration. If you wrap it in steel, it stops ringing. No matter how loud the world gets, it stays mute. That's what happens when Stoicism becomes armor instead of philosophy. You become sealed off, and the world stops getting in. But this isn't just personal. The societal consequences are massive. We live in a culture that increasingly idolizes emotional control over emotional presence. We reward people who don't cry, who don't complain, who keep it together at all costs. And we call it professionalism, leadership, masculinity, spiritual maturity. But what we're often witnessing isn't mastery, it's suppression. A generation of people who have learned to function without feeling, to perform strength instead of living truthfully, to numb rather than navigate. This leads to dangerous distortions. But what we're often witnessing isn't mastery, it's suppression. A generation of people who have learned to function without feeling, to perform strength instead of living truthfully, to numb rather than navigate. This leads to dangerous distortions. In men, it becomes the Stoic male archetype, strong, silent, disconnected. The man who never says, "I'm hurt," but ends up imploding from everything unspoken. In women, it becomes the hyper-independent figure, never needy, never soft, always composed. The woman praised for being low maintenance, while quietly dying of emotional starvation. In leaders, it becomes the cold rationalist, calculating, efficient, but unable to inspire or connect beyond the intellect. And worse, this mindset bleeds into how we parent, how we teach, how we love. Children are told not to cry. Partners are told to toughen up. Vulnerability becomes shameful, and feeling deeply becomes a flaw. All of this stems from a fundamental misunderstanding that emotions are the enemy of wisdom. But wisdom is not the absence of emotion. It's the ability to hold emotion without being ruled by it. It's not a still pond, it's a deep river, flowing with feeling, but guided by insight. When Stoicism loses this nuance, it becomes a form of psychological exile. You begin to exile parts of yourself that are inconvenient, messy, unpredictable. Your grief, your longing, your rawness, your tenderness. And with every part you exile, you become less whole. Even worse, you may start to feel that your numbness is a sign of success. That because you no longer flinch, no longer cry, no longer hope, you've arrived. You're untouchable now. But let me ask you this. What is the value of being untouchable? If it also means being untouched, the real deal is this. The most dangerous prison is the one you don't even know you're stuck in. And that's exactly what Stoicism, misapplied, can become. A brilliant ancient philosophy twisted into a subtle form of self-abandonment. A system that promises freedom, but quietly disconnects you from everything that makes life worth living. So where does that leave us? Are we doomed to either drown in emotion or die of repression? Not necessarily, but to find the way out, we must go beyond the surface. We must dismantle the illusion that control equals power and instead look at what it really means to be strong, to be whole, to be free, and that requires a rebellion. You've been calm, you've been composed, you've mastered the art of not flinching while the world burns. But now something inside you whispers that this armor is beginning to suffocate you. And here's the most radical act you can take. Let it crack. Let the strength you've performed for so long fall away, just enough to let the light in. Because this is where the rebellion begins. Not with fire, not with fury, but with permission. Permission to feel again. You see, the greatest illusion Stoicism offers isn't that you can control life. It's that you shouldn't be moved by it. But what if being moved is where your aliveness begins? Rebellion, in this context, doesn't mean discarding Stoicism. It means resurrecting its soul. It means remembering that Marcus Aurelius wrote his Meditations not as a performance of perfection, but as a private confession of his struggle to live with integrity in a chaotic world. He wasn't a statue. He was a man in motion. A man who cried, doubted, raged, and reflected. A man who wrestled with grief and loss, and still wrote, "Do not be ashamed of help." The modern Stoic has forgotten that part. But you don't have to. Here's how to break free, not by abandoning Stoicism, but by burning away its distortion. Step 1. Feel before you frame. When pain hits, most modern Stoics lean on logic. It's just a judgment. It's not the event, it's my interpretation. While this is technically true, it's often used too soon, like slapping a bandage over a bleeding wound without cleaning it first. The rebellion is this: let yourself bleed a little. Feel the ache fully before you frame it philosophically. Let grief crash over you. Let anger surge. Let heartbreak whisper its terrible wisdom. Don't rush to tame it with quotes. Let it move through you. You're not weak for doing this. You're human. You can't master an emotion by suppressing it. You master it by meeting it. Step 2. Speak the unsaid. Your silence has served you. It's made you appear wise, stable, beyond the noise. But silence can become a mausoleum for the truths you are too afraid to say. It's time to break that vow. Start small. I'm scared. I miss you. That hurt me more than I admitted. Let yourself be seen, not just as the composed observer, but as the trembling soul behind the eyes. There is more courage in a single act of raw honesty than in a lifetime of emotional control. Because vulnerability is not the opposite of strength. It is strength in motion. Step 3. Redefine strength. The Stoic ideal is often framed as unshackability. But what if true strength is flexibility? A tree that cannot bend will snap in a storm. The same is true of your soul. Redefine strength not as resistance to chaos, but as fluidity within it. Be the one who can cry and stand tall, who can mourn and move forward, who can feel deeply without being derailed. Nietzsche wrote, "One must still have chaos in oneself to be able to give birth to a dancing star." Your chaos is not the enemy. It's your raw material. Rebellion isn't about getting rid of feelings. It's all about changing them into something powerful. Step 4. Risk connection. When you've spent years curating your emotional landscape, connection feels dangerous. Because to connect deeply means risking exposure. It means saying, "I don't have it all together." It means allowing someone to see the part of you that doesn't quote Seneca, but silently weeps when the lights go out. The rebellion here is letting someone in. Let a friend see you in your uncertainty. Let a partner hold you in your confusion. Let the mask of composure fall, not always, but often enough to remind yourself, you are still alive. And being alive means being porous. Step 5. Transcend the binary. You don't have to pick between chaos and control, or feelings and logic. A real Stoic, like a true artist or warrior, brings it all together. He does not suppress his emotions. He channels them. She does not reject her feelings. She wields them as instruments of insight. They do not shun grief. They walk with it, learn from it, are reshaped by it. The rebellion is not in discarding Stoicism. It's in transcending it. Use its tools not as a shield, but as a compass. Use its wisdom not to numb, but to navigate. Let it guide you through emotion, not away from it. Epictetus once, a slave, didn't use Stoicism to become invulnerable. He used it to remain human despite pain. His teachings weren't sterile, they were forged in agony. Viktor Frankl, though not a Stoic in name, carried its flame through the horror of concentration camps. But even he warned against the danger of mere survival. He urged us to find meaning, not just control. The moment you ask, "What is this pain teaching me?" instead of "How do I get rid of it?" you become more than Stoic. You become awake. The final truth of the rebellion: you are not a marble statue. You are not a cold flame. You are not an unmoved mover. You are a breathing, breaking, blooming being. And your scars are not signs of failure. They are the places where light now enters. So if you've used Stoicism to survive, good. But if you want to live, you must now rebel. Not against the world, not against fate, but against the small self who believed that feeling less was the path to becoming more. There comes a moment quiet and shattering when you realize, all this time, you weren't becoming stronger. You were becoming invisible. And in your quest to transcend pain, you may have transcended yourself. This is the ultimate revelation buried at the heart of distorted Stoicism. Not that it failed to make you calm, not that it failed to make you stable, but that it succeeded in making you absent. Absent from your own experience, absent from love, absent from awe, absent from the trembling miracle of being alive in a world that breaks you open just to show you what's inside. And the final truth is this: you were never meant to be untouched by life. You were meant to be transformed by it. Because pain is not the opposite of wisdom. It is the forge of it. Look at every moment that shaped you. Was it stillness? Or was it suffering? Was it the quiet detachment from events? Or the raw, aching surrender to them? You learned the most not when you were composed, but when you were cracked. Not when you were stoic, but when you were vulnerable, scared, reaching. You became real in the moments when life humbled you, and you chose to feel anyway. So here is the deepest paradox. The more human you allow yourself to be, the more godlike you become. To embrace grief and still love. To sit with uncertainty and still create. To walk through darkness and still seek beauty. That is not weakness. That is not emotional chaos. That is transcendence. But it is a transcendence that does not float above the world. It bleeds with it. The truth is, no amount of Stoic philosophy can replace the experience of holding someone you love while they cry. No principle can substitute for the silence of a sunrise that makes your chest ache with its perfection. No mental reframing can match the fierce, wordless knowledge that you are alive, brutally, beautifully, vulnerably alive. And perhaps the final lesson is this: you do not become wise by becoming numb. You become wise by becoming whole. That means reclaiming the parts you left behind, the tears, the tenderness, the trembling. It means realizing that peace isn't the absence of emotion. It's the ability to stand inside it and still choose love. So now you face a choice. Not between stoicism and emotion. Not between control and chaos. But between hiding and showing up fully. Between surviving life and letting it change you. The greatest strength is not in resisting the storm. It's in walking into it without armor. Because when the armor drops, the truth appears. You were never meant to be a statue. You are meant to be a cathedral, cracked, imperfect, filled with light. And it's through those cracks that something divine begins to sing. What do you think? Have you used Stoicism to grow or to hide? Let me know in the comments. Your story might be the one that gives someone else permission to feel again. If this spoke to you, if it broke something open, please share it with someone who needs it. And don't forget to like the video. It helps more than you know. Because somewhere, someone is still wearing the mask you just took off. And they need to know they're not alone anymore.